Annyeong, it's Mikey here, and today we're going to be doing a very interesting switch. This one is going to be from TTC, so we have to thank TTC for sending this out to me, and this is going to be TTC's own version of the Cherry MX Blacks. They say this is supposed to be a better version, a little bit more lighter with the springs and clackier in sound, so we're going to have to really test that, see what the switch is like, even compare it in this video with an MX to a Black that I have that is unlubed and only spring swapped, and hear the differences and see where this is at. So we'll do a lubed and unlubed version of these switches and hear the differences. But please make sure to like and subscribe, and let's get straight into the video. So introducing to you guys the TTC PT Black. Now as you can see here, we're comparing it with the MX2A Black spring swapped and the TTC PT Black. We're going to have to do sound tests and compare both to see what it really is like. Now, both of them are very interesting, right? The Cherries, as everyone knows, is very popular and has a very great sound with the feel of a scratch. TTC, I think, really came up. I have to admit, TTC sounds a little bit clackier, has a little bit more sound to it, and overall, they did a great job. It actually sounds very, very similar and feels very similar to the MX2A Blacks. It's not the exact same though. There's a little bit of difference, which we'll go into. Now, going over the treble. So both of them are supposed to be 4mm treble, which is full treble switches. Now, the MX2A Blacks first. So we start off at 17.9, go all the way down to 13.8, but we're just going to do it again just to make sure. And as you can see here, 17.9 to all the way 13.9, which is a 4mm treble. Now make sure that TTC is also the same, which is going to be 18, and then we go all the way down, and it's 14mm. So both are 4mm treble, full treble switches, and I gotta admit, the TTC stock is going to be a little bit scratchier, I find, compared to the spring-swapped MX2A Blacks. Now, as you can see here, I spring swapped it. So I actually spring swapped it to the TTC 24mm elastic springs because I really like those. Now, this is going to be a stock unlubed MX2A Black that I purchased off of Keybay, and it's going to be unlubed mostly, except there's a little bit of lube right at the end where the stem hits the leaf. So there's just a very small amount of lube there, and then the rest I did not touch because I wanted to keep it stock. I actually like the cherries not lubed. Now, the TTC. So the TTC overall has a really cool nylon blend, which they really replicated what the cherry feels was like. And as you can see here, there's going to be slight differences in the colorway as well as the finish. So as you can look at the top housing, and you'll see it even with your own MX2As, if you get both, there's going to be small differences with the actual finish of the housing. But it still is a nylon blend, which I think TTC really came up with how they were trying to do it. Now, they really didn't put a lot of loop on them. So they have a little bit of loop on the actual leaf portion where it connects with the stem. So the touching points there, there's going to be just a little bit of loop there. And then we're going to also look at the stem, which you can see there as well. So overall, they really wanted to give you like that full on MX2A experience, stock, but a better feel. Now, the spring is much lighter, and it's going to be a little bit longer. So the spring is a 19mm spring, single stage, and I felt that it was quite light feeling, but it has a bit of that actuation bump at the top. Now, this is the stock stem, and as you can see, the stock stem actually does look a little bit different. You will actually get a little bit more of like a square look with this specific stem. And there's like no loop anywhere except at the edge of the stem where it connects with the leaf. Right at that little point there, you'll see a little bit of lubing that they've done. I think stock-wise, the TTCs is not going to be a lot of people's favorites. It actually is scratchier, in my opinion, compared to the MX2As. A little bit too much, and it has a little bit more of an airy sound. So the stock TTCs will sound a little bit more airy and have a little bit more resonation compared to the MX2A spring swap. I really highly recommend you do lube these switches. The reason why I say that is it still keeps the scratch and like the feel of the MX Blacks, but you get a little bit of a smoother feel with them. The stock is still very smooth in terms of like the movement, but you get a little bit more of a nicer sound with the lubed TTC. The PT Blacks can use a bit of lubing overall. I would say very light lubing, so I'll show you guys how I lubed mine, and it's very light. I did a small amount of 205 G0 and actually mixed it with 105 just to thin it out even more, and I just did a little bit on the sides, and it actually helped a lot. It made the sound a lot cleaner and more full, which I think is a better choice for this specific switch. And I think a lot of people who like the MX2A Blacks are really going to appreciate this TTC switch. It feels really nice. You don't have to spring swap it. You don't have to switch film it. You just have to loop a little bit, and you got a switch that really gets you that point where MX2A Blacks, like fully modded, would want to be. And I think they did a great job with that specifically. Now, of course, we're going to have to go into doing a decibel test just to see how loud it is because, YouTube doesn't really do well in terms of volume. So this is going to be the TTC Blacks first, and the PT Blacks actually are quite loud. They're louder than the MX Blacks are going to be. So you're going to be looking at around 66 to 67 decibels, and that decibel range is like close to a vacuum sound. 70 decibels is about a vacuum noise, and that's going to be quite loud for the TTC. Now the MX Cherry Blacks, the blacks are actually going to be a bit quieter. I would say they average around the 64 decibel point. So 64 decibels is, I would say, 3 people having a conversation around you or near you. And I think that's where it averages around. So loudness wise, it's actually going to be much quieter compared to the TTC ones. In terms of the TTC actuation and feel, so as you can see here, at the top end, you still actually get a decent bump. What I mean by that is you feel a bit of resistance, and as soon as the switch goes down, you feel more resistance as it goes down. It actually feels quite nice. I think they really aimed to make that feel that the cherries have, and they did a great job with this, but it doesn't feel too heavy because it's a 50 gram. I would say personally it's a bit too light, but it's really nice to feel. Now the top end of the switch, so you get very little rattling at the top end. They did a great job with that. And then once you push it down for the stem wobble, you actually get like no stem wobble. They also did a great job with that. I think TTC is really coming up with what they're doing, and you can see here even with keycaps. Normally when you guys look at my keycap stuff, it usually has more movement. This one had like no movement at all. Now in terms of the backlighting though, so the backlighting, it's not going to be bright, of course, right? There's no light diffuser. It's a fully black switch. And in terms of the color accuracy, I mean, it doesn't have like black color changes from the specific switch, but you won't have a lot of lighting. So keep in mind for that for those who really do like the backlighting. Now going into the spreadsheet. So for those who really want access to the spreadsheet, you can actually join my Discord channel. And of course, you can actually get access to this where I'll have it in my Discord channel where the documents are, and you can take a look to see what the different switches are. Now, where does this stand? So please keep in mind that the whole hertz like pitch section is not fully accurate. These are anchor points, and switches have multiple pitches in them. This is why even if something sounds clackier or deeper, the pitch might be different. The anchor points really are just there so we can kind of get an idea, but then I give you an explanation of the sides. Now, the PT is obviously higher pitched than the MX Cherries. You get a little bit more clack from them once you do have everything really comparatively. One thing though is both switches have a little bit of that deep medium sound profile at the bottom out. Once it tops out is where you're getting that clack sound, and that's what makes these switches quite interesting. So you get a mid sound with like a medium tone, and then you get a high pitch once it comes up. Honestly, I think you should really go check out these TTC switches. Now my thoughts on the TTC PT Blacks is that it does replicate the scratch of a MX Cherry, but it's not the exact same scratch. The sound wise, it has a slight difference between the two. The only thing is though, is that TTC did a great job with this one. In my honest opinion, I think it's actually even scratchier stock compared to the Cherries if you like scratch. And then once you do lube them, it actually does provide a nicer sound to it. I would say that TTC did a great job in trying to replicate it, especially when you consider that there's been a lot of different companies that tried to replicate the MX Cherry Blacks. I think TTC so far has become the closest to being like the stock ones. Now, TTC's springs is a bit lighter, which I personally think is nice, but a little bit too light in my personal opinion. I think they could have went with a little bit heavier and possibly worked on to making the sound a little bit more of like a solid clack compared to the Cherries, because everyone kind of has a different preference with the Cherries, and it would have just been cool to see TTC really pushing it to make something a little bit cooler and a little bit more improved. I'll have the links in the description. You guys can go check it out yourselves, but please check out the other videos I got, and I'll have to catch you guys next time.